Good evening. I'm Irv Kempner, president of the New England Friends of the March of the Living. It is my honor to welcome you to the second annual Voices from the Past, Lessons for the Future tribute event presented by the New England Friends of the March of the Living. A Jewish heritage experience, life-changing, a defining moment. This is how people describe the March of the Living. March of the Living brings individuals from all over the world to Poland and to Israel in order to study the history of the Holocaust and examine the roots of prejudice, discrimination, and hate, to affirm Jewish identity, and to vow to foster a world of peace and tolerance, where never again means never again. With growing discrimination and a rise in anti-Semitism, it's absolutely critical to instill at this time the lessons of the Holocaust for future generations. Never again has been both a reminder of the horrors of the Holocaust and an admonition to never again allow such hatred to take root. It's why March of the Living is so critical, so vital. 75 years after the end of the war, memories of the Holocaust are unfortunately fading. A recent study by the Claims Conference found that nearly 2/3 of Americans between the ages of 18 and 40 could not define the scope of the Holocaust, and deeply concerning, 11% believe that Jews caused the Holocaust. The time is now to ensure the critical lessons of the Holocaust are not forgotten and taught properly. When I think of the power of that statement, I think of Izzy Arbeiter.
The trip to Poland and that area with Izzy was one of those things where, as a filmmaker, you kind of just hit record on your camera. You kind of let Izzy tell his story. You can't believe the situations that this man was put in. And then you realize he is who he is today because of all of these things that he went through. He's a living witness to history. And as Izzy looked at this as an opportunity as a survivor to go through the rest of his life and educate others about what he went through, what he saw.
Israel Arbeiter was 14 years old when the Germans first entered his city of Plock, Poland, in early September 1939. First came the German army, then the SS and Gestapo.
In the next 5.5 years, I was imprisoned. I was a slave, condemned to death for the only crime I have committed because I was born to Jewish parents. Go home and tell your parents, your families, what you learned, what you saw here. And remember that only good people can prevent a catastrophe like this, what took place here, from happening again. Learn what you see and remember what you learn.
Izzy made a promise to his father to live his life, turning his father's words into his own actions, teaching remembrance, hope, and humanity for over 75 years. Never again became Izzy's watchword. That's the message that the two of our treasured Holocaust survivors, Stephen Ross, for whom we named the prestigious Stephen Ross Excellence in Holocaust Education Award, and Izzy Arbeiter, who is our honoree, stood for. Both men have dedicated their lives to teach those lessons to the next generation by sharing their very personal stories of tragedy, survival, and perseverance. We cannot thank them enough for sharing that legacy and their memories. These critical lessons are the foundation of the New England Friends of the March of the Living. Tonight you will see how Izzy Arbeiter's enduring impact paves the way for programs like March of the Living to honor his lifelong work, to pave the way for future Jewish leaders. I invite you to watch with me as we stand together in support of breaking down barriers of hate. We stand in support of learning from the past and looking to a more just tomorrow.
Izzy Arbeiter has yet to have the privilege of participating in the March of the Living. But his life's journey has been the March of the Living, surviving 7 concentration camps and what was intended as a final forced death march. Izzy was miraculously liberated in 1945, and with his former identity etched forever on his left forearm, prisoner number A18651 embarked on a march of his own. In the displaced persons camp in Germany, he reunited with his soon-to-be wife, Anna, and together they journeyed to the United States in 1949 with their infant daughter, Harriet. They proceeded to make a life for themselves that has included a successful business, a beautiful home on the banks of the Charles River in Newton, and most importantly, 2 more children, 3 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. But it is what he did along the way in his march that brings us here today. Since his arrival in Boston, Izzy founded the American Association of Jewish Holocaust Survivors of Greater Boston, helped establish the community commemoration of Yom HaShoah, became a member of the National Executive Committee of the American Gathering of Jewish Holocaust Survivors, and worked with the Claims Conference and the Jewish Family and Children's Services to ensure that the health and well-being of area survivors would never be neglected. He joined forces with his friend Steve Ross to create the magnificent New England Holocaust Memorial along the Boston's historic Freedom Trail. He has been a constant presence at schools and colleges, locally and across Germany and Poland, sharing his story in ways that only a survivor can. He joined with the Jewish Community Relations Council to establish the Israel Arbeiter Holocaust Essay Contest, bringing the history and lessons of the Holocaust to thousands of Boston area students, and in so doing, teaching a generation of educators how to educate their students about the Holocaust. Through his eloquence and his passion, he has enraptured thousands in this country, in Poland, and Germany, giving live testimony to the misdeeds of the darkest days of humanity, while bringing a message of hope for a future free from hatred and bigotry. For his efforts, he has received numerous well-deserved recognitions, including the prestigious Order of the Merit bestowed upon him by the government of Poland. His impact in the realm of Holocaust education is truly immeasurable. I cannot think of a more appropriate and deserving recipient of the March of the Living's Stephen Ross Excellence in Holocaust Education Award than Steve's good friend, Izzy Arbeiter. Izzy and Steve shared so much in common: the tragic loss of family members in the Holocaust, enduring the unimaginable horrors of the death camps, the challenges of surviving and thriving in their new country, the reestablishment of family, the triumph of good over evil and love over hate. But of all their commonalities, what has always struck me most particularly is their shared passion and uncompromising resoluteness for one thing: ensuring that the history of the Holocaust be understood by all, that the victims be remembered and honored, and that the lessons of the effect of unbridled bigotry and hatred be learned and never forgotten. Each man made himself a promise to do all in his power to ensure that what happened to them and to their Jewish brothers and sisters in the Holocaust would never be forgotten and would never happen again to anyone. Each has made their own March of the Living, and with this award we honor both of them for forging the path that allows us all to continue that march, following in their footsteps.
When I think of the impact that Izzy Arbeiter has had on me, it's impossible to list everything. But I can narrow it down to 3 different categories. The first, and perhaps maybe the most important, is that there isn't anything a survivor can ask of us that we shouldn't do or figure out or find help for. The second would be that it's our responsibility to represent those survivors in our community and throughout the world as much as we possibly can. And thirdly, the impact Izzy had on me was to say that we can never do enough to make sure future generations are educated about the Holocaust. When survivors of the Holocaust first came to Boston, they wanted to stay connected to each other. They formed soccer teams. Izzy Arbeiter, along with my father and other survivors, played soccer together. And from the start with those soccer teams emerged an association, and they called themselves the New Americans. And Izzy Arbeiter was very instrumental in putting that association together. And over the years, the name changed to the American Association of Jewish Holocaust Survivors and Descendants of Greater Boston. But its mission never changed, and the work that Izzy did to keep it going for 5 decades was tremendous. But it's the responsibility of the second generation and the third generation to tell the stories we heard from our parents and our grandparents, to continue what Izzy did all those years. And Izzy Arbeiter, along with survivors like Steve Ross and many other survivors, have spoken over the years to thousands and thousands and thousands of school children and groups in our community and around the world, helping them to learn about the Holocaust by hearing firsthand about their history. Izzy Arbeiter made a tremendous impact to our community. But the lessons he taught, it's now our responsibility to continue.
I can still remember it clearly. I had just arrived home from the office when I received a phone call from our police chief, Kevin Molis, stating that a Malden resident had vandalized the Holocaust Memorial in Boston. I was devastated at the news and immediately reached out to then Boston Mayor Marty Walsh to offer our assistance and support. The next day, the mayor invited me to a press conference where I met Holocaust survivor Israel Izzy Arbeiter. Izzy took me aside and assured me that we would get through this together. Not only did we join forces to help our communities move forward during that terrible time, but we also became good friends and were getting together on a regular basis prior to COVID-19. Izzy has been out to Malden several times to meet with our students and educate them about the atrocities of the Holocaust so that it never happens again. Our motto in Malden is strong past, proud future, and there is no one that epitomizes that more than Israel Izzy Arbeiter.
Izzy Arbeiter is an enormous inspiration, a guiding force, and a tremendous leader. When I joined the board at JF&CS, I didn't even know there was a Holocaust Services program. It wasn't until I was there for 2 years that I went to the 10th anniversary dinner of the program Izzy entitled Hakala, and I met Izzy along with the other founders of the program. The program is devoted to helping Holocaust survivors who are in need, and Izzy has been and continues to be their greatest advocate. It has become the central focus of my efforts at JF&CS. I became the board president at JF&CS. He has been the inspiration for the work that I have done as a community leader since I began working in the nonprofit community. And in particular, he has been a guiding light for me in my attempt to make this world a better place. He has always represented the best of community involvement and tikkun olam. And he has taken what has been an enormously terrible experience in the world and turned it into making the world a better place. Izzy, I just want to thank you personally from the bottom of my heart. You have been among the most important people that I have met in my life, and I just want you to know how much I appreciate you and everything you have done for me.
This is my husband, Michael Petrausch, and I'm Christine Petrausch. We met Izzy first in 2010, a few days before the opening of the memorial, about half a year before the opening of the memorial. We are Roman Catholics, and our church community asked, would you take part at the opening of this memorial, or if we want to take care of one of the visitors coming, one of the...
During his stay, in
a
couple of days during the opening.
And I had a list with names but I had no idea who is who. And Izzy's name was first on the list. And so I just said, okay, I'll take care of that person, not knowing who it was. And this place was a hangar and a runway for airplanes, for night fighters. And after World War II, there was hardly anything left. And because there was nothing left, a memorial was made. It looks like a triangle. And most of the triangle, like in the seas, is way down below. It's just a little of that iceberg that's what happened here in Germany with the extinction of the Jewish people. In November 1944, Izzy was one of 601 Jewish prisoners. And when they came here, they all had numbers. In the last years, we have found out who was here. And so all the persons, they were no longer numbers, they had names, because everybody has a name.
Das ist mein Name. Arbeiter Israel.
And on this monument, all the names were now put together. Izzy's name is there, and all the 601 names. And so we went to schools. We organized visits in schools. I'm sure it was such an impact on their lives to meet somebody who made this awful experience. And he is not full of hatred. So I think it was for those students something they cannot take out of books. They cannot take out of movies. This can only happen when you meet somebody personally. We are working for the future here. And this is what Izzy does and did. He works for the future. That what happened will never happen again. He is inviting people in a way, look at my life, look what I did. Look what you can do. You can change the world. We want to thank Izzy.
He changed our life.
You have done your utmost possible to keep the promise to your father. We know that you did it. Thank you.
Izzy, to me and to my family, is probably one of the most special people that we are so grateful to have in our lives. I first met Izzy probably about 25 years ago, and he always introduces me as his dermatologist. We developed a friendship over a period of several years. I was with him probably at another event, and he very casually said to me, "Michael, would you like to go on a road trip?" And I said, "Sure, where's the road trip to?" He goes, "Do you want to go to Europe?" And Izzy was invited to speak in Germany to share some of his experiences about time during the Holocaust. And he wanted to know if I would like to accompany him on the trip. One day when we were traveling in Germany, they knew how special Izzy is. They had also known him for many years. And they also knew that it's not forever that Izzy was going to be able to come back to Germany to speak. And they made a point of packing in the schedule. And all of us, we were traveling. I think there were 4 or 5 events that Izzy participated in. He was on German television. There were several venues in which he spoke, several schools. There was a meeting with one of the mayors in one of the towns. And he was scheduled to speak at a church. And apparently there were going to be several hundred people at the church. And Izzy, for the first time I had ever seen him, he looked a little tired, and we were all exhausted. And I said to Izzy, are you sure you want to do this? And he said, this is what I'm here to do. I'm going to do this. I think in his mind, he was keeping his promise to his father, to remember what had transpired and to educate people about the Holocaust. In Germany, he would always say things to the young people. For example, "You're the future of the world. It's you young people. You're good people. You're going to make sure these things never happen again."
We came out from the trains. My family was murdered, my father, my mother, my 7-year-old brother, and I was here in 1944, at the end of 44. And this is a very good thing that the people are doing, that bringing you here, so the young people can learn and know what took place. Because you are going to, with all your beautiful faces, you're going to be the leaders, the future leaders.
What was so striking to me was that there was no barrier to communication. It was the exact same connection, which to me was just an incredible thing to experience. It's been amazing to see him leave that mark that will last forever with everybody who's had the opportunity to hear him speak. I think also for my kids especially, he's been able to help us to be the best that we can be. And that's quite an important thing, I think, for all of us, to have somebody in our lives who we can aspire to be like.
I'm just so grateful to have grown up knowing Izzy. I think it's given me such like an important perspective growing up, seeing things in the news and everything, having heard his stories when he would come to my school and speak. Whenever you see something going on in the world that's clearly not right, people are being oppressed or treated wrongly, he's just an advocate for tolerance, for peace, for fighting against injustices and just standing up for people.
I think Izzy and Anna really bring to light our connection to Judaism. I think, they really personify what it means to be part of a community, what it means to be part of a family, and what it means to build relationships with people around you.
Izzy, you know how much we love you, how grateful we are to have been a part of your life, for you to be such a huge part of our life. We're forever appreciative of all that you've done for us, and we're just so happy to be part of this program for you.
Hi, Izzy. We are so very proud of you. You are such an amazing force in the world for speaking out against anti-Semitism, for speaking out against any type of discrimination, for making sure that the world never forgets about the horrors of the Holocaust, and for being somebody who has educated countless people about the dangers of anti-Semitism and discrimination. And I know that you worked hard side by side with my father to make sure that you always got this message out to the world. But you have also been such a fabulous advocate for the survivors. You have always helped them. You have made their lives better, and you have enriched their lives every single day. Not a day has gone by in your life that you didn't do something for the survivor community. And not a day has gone by in your life that you didn't stand up against hatred, anti-Semitism, and discrimination. And I know that if my father was here today, he would be so honored and so proud that you are the recipient of this award in his name. We cannot think of a better person for this award. And again, we are so very honored and so very proud of you.
When I think about this award, I think about my grandpa and how proud he would be today to see you receive this award. Izzy, just like my grandfather, spent most of his life trying to educate the next generations on the atrocities of the Holocaust, just like March of the Living is doing currently with the kids from my generation. On behalf of my family, I'm proud to present you with the Stephen Ross Excellence in the Holocaust Education Award.
Thank you, Julie and Joe, for those kind words about my father. And thank you to the March of the Living for presenting the prestigious Stephen Ross Excellence in Holocaust Education Award to my father. Unfortunately, my father couldn't be here today to accept this award in person, but he asked me to thank everyone on his behalf for this great honor.
I first met Izzy about 3 years ago when I was teaching world literature to sophomores here at St. Bernard's High School. Though we're a Catholic school, and I am a Catholic myself, I always look to embrace many different cultures and faiths, especially into teaching. We were doing a unit on Holocaust literature, and my students got really, really into it, and they really wanted to know if we could get a Holocaust survivor to come to the school and speak, which I thought would be very, very difficult. But I was really, really lucky to come across the Survivors Organization out of Boston, because they sent Izzy to our school literally within 2 days of getting in contact with them before I even knew he was here. Before Izzy began to speak, I was a little bit worried about some of our students' behavior. I was worried about them sitting still for a long period of time and being respectful, but I was really humbled because I worried for absolutely no reason. When Izzy was speaking, not only did our students behave, but they were so engaged with what he was saying. Many of them were crying at the parts that he recounted about his family. At the end of his story, the students who I was worried about in terms of behavior were the first students to go up to Izzy and embrace him in this giant hug. And I felt tears coming to my eyes just saying that. And we actually even have a bulletin board dedicated to Izzy in our school. That's how special he is to our community. Since Izzy spoke at our school, not only has our curriculum evolved to include more lessons on justice, anti-racism, and anti-Semitism, but his influence has transpired to our students, our staff, our community. A group of my students actually voluntarily came to the 2019 Holocaust commemoration in Boston on a Sunday in their uniforms because they were so influenced by what Izzy had said and when he had come to our school. I mean, it takes someone really special to get kids to come anywhere on a Sunday, especially in their uniforms. I think the biggest thing that I've personally gotten from Izzy is my ability to see beyond the surface. Reading books and watching documentaries, they're important for education and teaching, but it can't replace the experience of knowing someone such as Izzy. For myself, knowing Izzy has enriched my life and opened my eyes, which I continue to instill in my students because, as Izzy says, they are our future leaders. To quote St. Bernard's mantra, Izzy has definitely taught me to be proactive in loving one another.
March of the Living for me was a pivotal experience in my young Jewish life. At the time, I was considering the possibility of becoming a cantor. My congregation had really encouraged me that I've got what it takes and that I would really be a great cantor and a great addition to Jewish leadership in the future. I had a pivotal experience of leading daily services during the trip that showed me the power of Jewish prayer and the power of my voice in Jewish prayer. And the March of the Living for me really solidified that because I saw the impact that Judaism not only has had on me, but also on other students, other teenagers from all over the world, and really the responsibility that we have as the next generation of Jewish leaders to carry on in the footsteps of our ancestors. For me, the act of going and seeing and being with survivors surpassed any documentary or class or book that I could have read here in the US. And I just hope that March of the Living can be here for the next generation, for my own children who are 10 and 6, and for generations to come, so that they can see firsthand and pass on those experiences and continue to educate here in the US and all over the world.
It's very funny. Everybody refers to him as Izzy, but I always refer to him as Mr. Arbeiter because I grew up as a young child, and all my life cycle events and all my simchas he's been at. So I've always known him as Mr. Arbeiter. My first experience in how he truly impacted me in with regards to remembering the Holocaust, remembering the Shoah, was probably around the dedication of the memorial in downtown Boston. As a youth director of a synagogue to the actual groundbreaking. Watching Mr. Arbeiter's efforts along with Steve Ross, their dedication to making sure that we never forget and that we always remember. And that came out in a project that we also did at the South Area Solomon Schechter Day School, where in his honor, we created the Gallery of Understanding. And it was important to Mr. Arbeiter. He would come in with Cardinal O'Malley and express and demonstrate for the kids, and be the dugma of working with other communities and building those bridges with other communities around us, and that to the kids at the Solomon Schechter Day School. Unfortunately, when the school had to close, we were in danger of losing this Gallery of Understanding. But at Gann Academy, they appreciated the value of what it stood for and what it offered to its students. Rabbi Baker at that time welcomed and was honored to have Mr. Arbeiter's name be there at the school library and have its own section as a Gallery of Understanding at Gann Academy. As a second generation child, I feel a responsibility that I need to make sure I pass on my family's legacy. My children, and Micha, who was really had the benefit, my youngest, had the honor and opportunity to attend the March of the Living trip to Poland.
Definitely my most important trip that I've ever taken was March of the Living. I didn't really know exactly what to expect when I went there. One moment that really kind of turned things around for me was when we visited the cemetery in Lodz, Poland. And at that cemetery is the grave of my great-grandmother. And we found that grave. We FaceTimed my father, and we said the Morning Scottish, and it was. It's hard for me to describe what that moment meant to me, but the best way that I can is just that it solidified what I already knew, in that this is where my family was, this is what happened to them, and it's important for every part of the story, not only the Holocaust, but every part of my family's story to be remembered, keeping the mantra of never again. It's programs like March of the Living that, and also just learning from my father and the lessons that my dad taught him and everyone around him, that kind of lights that fire inside me that wants to fight against bigotry, fight against discrimination, that has kind of shaped my moral compass throughout my life.
Mr. Arbeiter, yasher koach to you, all the strength to you. Kol hakavod, you deserve every honor that comes to you. You taught us what your stories were, and you brought it on to our generation for us to take the responsibility to carry on the stories, to carry on our legacies, who we were in Europe as Jews. Toda rabah.
You have now heard from our teens and the community both here and abroad. You have seen that teaching the lessons of the Holocaust is not an optional subject in school, absolutely vital to the survival of our community, the health of our country, and the flourishing of the world. Izzy made a promise to his father, and March of the Living makes a promise to you to teach about the roots of prejudice and to fight anti-Semitism and hatred in all of its forms. So I ask you to join me in taking action now. We at the New England Friends of the March of the Living are committed to ensuring a $2,000 scholarship for every teen who wants to attend the trip. The New England Friends of the March of the Living invests in our youth. They are our future and yours. To those of you who have already supported our mission, we thank you for your support. If you haven't donated, You can do so now by clicking the donate button on your screen. I've got good news for you. For every $500 or more that you donate, an anonymous donor said he will match up to $2,000. Can you imagine? $500 becomes $1,000, $1,000 becomes $2,000 and a full scholarship, and a $2,000 donation by you becomes two full scholarships for trips to attend the march. So what are you waiting for? Press that button on your screen. Paid in installments. Every dollar counts. Every dollar makes a difference in our mission-critical work. So help us achieve our mission. Support us, share, and be aware. Support the March of the Living. Click on that donate button right now on your screen. Share the website we are on now with your friends and family. Let them know that their youth can join 10,000 participants from around the world, from 50 countries, going to Poland and Israel. So one at a time, they can be changed, and they in turn will change the world. Be aware. We not only value your financial support, but we equally value your awareness of the work that we do to spread our message, rail, trip, experience, and movement. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend your evening with us and for your wonderful support. Thank you to all of our tribute presenters for creating such a memorable evening. Thank you to Izzy Arbeiter and his family. Izzy, may you continue from strength to strength. We will honor your legacy forever. Thank you to the Stephen Ross family. We are honored to carry on your father's legacy. On behalf of the board of the New England Friends of the March of the Living, thank you to our community partners and to all of you for being with us tonight. We wish you safety, health, and peace. Good night, Laila Tov, and Shalom.